Are you ready to do this, Matt?
Yes, sir. Punch it, Chewy.
Welcome, super friends, to the Fortress of Nerditude podcast, a safe place to talk about all things in nerd and pop culture. I'm Spencer Stapleton, and my co-pilot is Matt Shaw. We're two nerds that just refuse to grow up. Thank you for joining us. This is episode 216. We release every Thursday morning. You can find us on the website fortofnerd.com. We have links to Google, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, and everywhere podcasts are available. Stop by and relax a while. If you like what you're hearing, hit that subscribe button and get us automatically each and every week in your ear holes. Matt, it has been a week to say the least. How are you? What is going on? What is new? How is the Shaw family?
Wow, so many questions. I don't know where to start. No, man, we're good.
Well,
We're
like
good.
Mary Poppins herself says in The Sound of Music, start at the very beginning. A
Well, I'm going to
very
start with
good place
today,
to start.
despite the song portion of the podcast. Um,
Hey.
no, it was a good week.
Yeah.
We mostly hung out at home. We went to Olive Garden actually, so we did go one place.
Did you get the free, like the breadstick soup salad, like unlimited deal? Is that what you got?
No, we did
Uh,
not. We sold an old table of ours on Facebook Marketplace.
okay.
And I was like, with this money, I the take you to Olive Garden.
Did when you sold it, did you like have that moment you're like, listen, table, you've been a good friend, but
Yeah.
now I'm gonna go have the tour of Italy in your honor.
Yeah. We traded a table for a meal.
Wow.
No, it
Wow.
just we bought a different kitchen table and it was time for that thing to go bye bye. So
Ooh,
somebody came, picked it up. We went out to eat on that money. So that was fun.
nice.
Um, this week, y'all, I went to Middle Earth a lot.
Really?
A
You
lot.
got to New Zealand this week?
That's not Middle
I didn't
Earth.
know you. I didn't know you were traveling.
Um, yeah, travel bans don't apply to me.
Oh, look at you.
I watched for the first time since the theaters the Hobbit trilogy on HBO Max.
Okay.
Because I don't own them and I've never really had a desire to revisit them because I didn't like them. So I spent however many hours that is, 12. I don't know, it's less than that because they're
Mm,
not near as long
maybe like
as
nine
The Lord of
hours.
the
Yeah.
Rings, but a decent chunk of time revisiting that trilogy kind of while I was working. It
Okay.
wasn't like at night where I had my full attention on it, and it was a little bit better than I remember. I'll give it that. Um, so many things I don't like, but there's enough in there that I do like that I don't hate them.
Yeah.
The second one's pretty good. The third one's not good. The first
Mm,
one's fine.
yeah.
That's how I would rank them.
Middle
Um,
good. Beginning fine. Last.
yeah,
Eh.
right, exactly. Take it or leave it. I would leave it. It could be like a 45-minute movie if they would just trim the fat. But
I once again stand by my stance that the 1977 animated Rankin and Bass Hobbit cartoon is better than the movies.
well, you wouldn't be wrong.
Also,
Um,
nostalgia plays a little into that. It's
just a little bit.
just a teensy.
It's entertaining.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some really good things about it that I really like. Things that were added that I actually liked, but there are a lot of things that were added I didn't. Whatever.
Yeah.
Long story short, I went to Middle Earth and then I couldn't get enough Middle Earth and I wanted good Middle Earth. So Jesse and I picked
Yes.
up Lord of the
Yes.
Rings and we watched The Fellowship of the
Oh,
Ring
so good.
extended edition. Of course, we have it.
Always,
I know that
yes.
we talked about this, but I pre-ordered it in 4K and we started it a while ago, but then we really sat down. So we watched all of all of the Fellowship of the Ring, and then we're like just
Yeah.
maybe 30 minutes into the Two Towers. So, we're having a lot of fun going back to Middle Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And yesterday, I just have to say, we tried. We tried to watch Wonder Woman 84, and
Tried?
we found it so bad that we could not get past
Yeah.
the first 45 minutes.
Yep.
Just not for us.
Yeah.
Not for us. It was shockingly disappointing.
This isn't like in anything in Rebel
Mm.
Intelligence, but I did see today that like it's dropped into what's classified as rotten territory by critics
Oh,
reviewing it on Rotten Tomatoes, which means it's fallen below 60%. It's like at 59, which still
okay.
means it's kind of like an average movie based on like
Right.
all movies. And audiences are a little higher on it, but when I saw that, I was like, oh, the first one was so good, and now this one's being
Yeah.
certified as rotten on Rotten Tomatoes. I'm like, that's not
Right.
good publicity.
No,
Not at
no.
all.
So we just couldn't do it.
Ah.
So we turned it off and we watched Lord of the Rings instead, which is a way better choice.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Doesn't matter how many times I've seen it, it was still a
Yeah.
better choice. And then lastly, there were a bunch of new shows that came out this week. We watched a new NBC comedy with Ted Danson called Mr. Mayor. I recommend it. It's very funny.
Okay.
Excited to see kind of where that show takes us. We watched the season premiere, of course, of The Bachelor.
Of
Can't miss that.
course.
Big Bachelor, Bachelorette fans over at the Shaw home.
Matt,
We watched
I'm waiting for the
what?
day when you're gonna say, "Can we do a sidekick podcast on The Bachelor?"
Oh, I'd love to. I got so many opinions on that show. Oh, it's a blast. If you watch it with the right spirit, boy, that show's fun. Um,
It's crazy.
and then this isn't on Rebel Intelligence, but I did want to mention it as something that could be newsworthy to individuals as they prepare when this podcast releases tomorrow, Friday the 15th. WandaVision will release 2 episodes. First of all, I just want to say that. I don't remember if we said that last time, but they're releasing
Wait,
two
two?
episodes on Friday. Yeah, maybe I should
Oh.
say this for Rebel Intelligence. 2 episodes on Friday, and on Friday of last week, they released a 7-minute video about Wanda and like a 7-minute video on Vision to kind of prepare you. So we watched those two.
Yep.
They're called Legends on Disney Plus to kind of prep you for WandaVision, because we don't know a lot about them,
So
and their story's a little bit confusing, at least in my opinion.
which I'm gonna throw the curtain back here a little bit on the podcast. Every week we have a conversation, Matt and I, about like what we want our discussion that week to be. Some weeks we know, like, okay, it's the 4th of July, so we're gonna do something that's 4th of July themed, or it's Mother's Day,
Yeah.
Father's Day, Christmas, whatever. But we had a conversation about this week's podcast, and we actually talked about the idea of doing like a discussion that was like a primer on like, here's what you need to know about like Wanda, Wanda, the Scarlet Witch. Here's what you need to know about Vision, and like we kind of talked about that. But then,
Right.
you were like, oh, they just released these things called Legends, and it's a 7-minute video, and I was like, well, then we should probably do something else, because Marvel's gonna do in 7 minutes what we would do very horribly in like an hour and a half if we took that
Yeah.
much time. So
Right.
I'm just a little sneak peek that's almost what our discussion was going to be tonight. Instead, we're recommending go to Disney Plus and watch the Legends video for 7 minutes. You'll be fine.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
So that was our week. Lots of shows and hanging out. We did go eat something, which was kind of fun. Went out to eat, which we don't do very often anymore.
Yeah.
At least somewhere. Emmy was out of her mind excited.
Really?
And yeah, that was my week. How was yours? What's going on?
Well, the Stapletons are in negotiations right now. We are talking about coming to visit the Shaws sometime in 2021.
Oh yeah, baby.
So we the whole COVID thing, right? Like it's one of these things where we're like, you so want to be able to do things. And so we started like looking ahead, like, spring break, summertime, like when we could start thinking like, hey, more vaccines could be available. We, we can be safe. We know you guys pretty much stay in your own little bubble in your house and whatnot.
Yeah.
So we're kind of like in talks, in contemplation and negotiations as to like what we want to do this year if we can. And one of the things that's actually pretty much at the top of the list unless Disneyland opens. And I'm just going to say this now, Matt, if Disneyland opens, I hope you can join us in Disneyland because I think I will lose that conversation very quick to my wife.
Right.
But yeah, I think you guys are at the top of the list coming down to Texas and visiting you guys, which means if that's going to happen, you and I got to talk because I want to do Buc-ee's. I want to go to Franklin's Barbecue in Austin and do that. Like, make a list. Britta's like, we could do this and this. I'm like, well, let's talk to Matt and Jesse and let's, find out from real people in Texas, all the things. But
yes,
we're talking about that. So we're looking forward to that. And then, okay, so this week I watched the rest of Cobra Kai. And
good.
we've finished season 3 of Cobra Kai. We're really, really, really excited by that because I love that. And that show's just amazing. And the way it ends, and I know there's going to be a 4th season, and so that's exciting. And I'm not going to say anything, super friends, to those of you that are listening right now because I don't want to spoil it for you. But I will say that it is a very good follow-up season to the first 2 seasons that were on YouTube Red that came over to Netflix. And so I really, really hope if you've seen any of it that you stick with it and watch the 3rd season because it's really good. As far as like things, the rest of this week, we went outside and took down all the rest of our Christmas decorations. So there are no more lights on the house. And I realized, Matt, lights come down a lot faster than they go up.
Oh my gosh.
A lot. Like, I asked my wife, I said, do you think if I tug on this string, because I'm on the ground, I was like, do you think if I tug on this string that I can get the little plastic clips that clip underneath the shingles? I'm like, do you think they'll come off? And she's like, maybe. And I found that if I pulled it just the right way and like didn't leave a lot of slack and didn't let it get too far ahead of me, I could get them all to pop out. And a couple didn't. And so I did have to get back up on the roof, but then I was like, hey, give me that broom. And I went by with a broom and just hitting them and like knocking them off and like letting the kids pick them up. So we got all of our Christmas lights down. I actually had to take some of the outdoor decorations over to my mom's garage to store them there because I don't want to break those things down and have to rebuild them again. It's just, it's such a pain. I mean, it took us like 2 hours to put together this like, whatchamacallit, this like 2 reindeer and Santa sleigh thing that lights up. Like it was a miserable event. I was like, no freaking way. I was like, I'm storing this as is. So so we had to go over there. But when we went over there, my mom's husband Roger said like, hey, we're trying to set up these like smart lights and do this thing with an app. And we need to put them on the guest Wi-Fi because the guest Wi-Fi broadcasts on the 2.4 megahertz band and our normal one's at the 5 gigahertz. Can you help us out? I'm like, sure. Okay. So I go to set this up and I realize they don't know their password. And and the software that controls the wireless access point, I set up for them originally, and I didn't have that computer there. So I had to set it up on Roger's computer, which then meant I had to like reset his wireless network so I could readopt it into the correct one. And like it ended up becoming this thing where like we were there for like 4 hours. Kids hadn't had lunch. They were going nuts. And I'm like, Mom, do you have anything? She's like, I don't know, Spence. I don't have a lot of food. I haven't been. I'm like, anything. And I'm like, anything, Mom, anything. Opened up and we found some like pineapple in her fridge and like a slice or 2 of cheese and some olives or something. Like, there, kids, eat that. Stop being so like they were just so hangry. But I didn't know we were going to be over there for 4 hours. I didn't know that it was going to be as detailed. Like if I would have known that, I just would have left the kids and my wife home. Like I wouldn't have brought them. So anyway, that happened. Friday night, I got to play a bunch of Fall Guys with our good friend Ryan at RMK Buried Alive. It was his birthday stream, so I got to hang out with him for a few hours and just play
Nice.
and chat and hang out, and that was really good. But the thing I think I'm probably the most proud of this week was we finished watching The Empire Strikes Back with the boys, and this is the first time they've really sat down and watched it. And of course,
Right.
like, Empire Strikes Back came out in 1980. It's an older movie.
Yeah.
The original Star Wars A New Hope was 77.
Mm.
Pacing's a little slower, things take a little bit, right? So I would kind of
Yeah.
have to like kind of talk during some scenes. I'm like, hey, so they're trying to use Princess Leia and Chewbacca and Han Solo as bait to trap Luke Skywalker. Well, what does that
Mhm.
mean, Dad? Well, Luke wants to help his friends, right? Yeah, like just like you want to help your friends. Yeah, but Darth Vader's trying to trap Luke Skywalker, so he's trying to make there be a reason for Luke to come there, so he's using them, and he's like, oh, and so like they were really kind of getting it like on a deeper level because they've seen the movie when they were younger, but like
Yeah.
they just kind of like glazed over and just like,
Right.
this time they're like really kind of trying to get some of the subtleties and get some of the like the reasons behind what's going on. And so we're watching it. We start getting up to that place in Cloud City where Luke arrives and Leia's yelling it's a trap, and they're like, "No, Luke, don't go that way." And they're like, "Don't." And then he falls down into the little shaft, and then Charlie's like, "Oh no." Because Vader flips the switch, and then boom, Luke shoots up, and Charlie's like, oh, "How'd he get out? How'd he get out?" Like they had bought in, like they were asking
That's
questions, and they were
awesome.
just like on the edge of their seats. And when you get to the moment in Empire, when it's the big reveal, right? When
Yeah.
Darth Vader tells them, Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father. He told me enough. He told me you killed him. No, I am your father. That can't be true, Sir Sheffield. Like that whole thing, the kids were just like, and Charlie's like, Dad, what? Wait, Darth Vader's Luke Skywalker's father? What? And Jackson's like, I knew this. I read it in a book. I was like, they're just like, but it was so fun to see them like get into that and like want to know more and ask all these questions. And so it's that like they're just at that age where like Star Wars is really like it's just really starting to grip them. So next on the agenda we'll be watching Return of the Jedi. I am having them watch this in the theatrical release order. So it's going to be
Right.
original
Yeah.
trilogy, then we'll go back in time and do the prequels.
Which
I
they'll love.
I would, yeah, they'll love those. They'll love them. They won't see all the things I see that just make me cringe at times.
Hmm.
I think we'll get to watch. They've seen The Force Awakens a few times. We'll probably watch this sequel trilogy, but I'm hoping it's far later down the road because there's going to be a lot of like Daddy having to explain things that Daddy's not a fan
Right.
of, that Daddy thinks is hot trash. I'm like, and they're kids, and I don't want to crap all over Star Wars for them
Sure.
because it just hurts my heart to do that, Matt.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, that's been my week. It's been real good, a lot of fun. But speaking of Star Wars, Matt, there's something that we do in the podcast every week,
Yes.
and I almost would feel bad if it wasn't for the fact that we need that rebel intelligence.
We need it.
So Matt, I think we got to kill some more Bothans this week.
Let's do it.
I always have to let you know, many Bothans died to bring us this information.
Rest in peace, you Bothans.
All right, Matt, we are into rebel intelligence. What do you have for me this week?
So this little bit of news is a nugget for both Star Wars and Marvel.
Okay.
So we kind of got an interesting little bit of news this week. If you remember back in 2019, Kevin Feige was confirmed to be in charge of developing a Star Wars film.
Yeah.
And we haven't heard anything about it really since then. We didn't get any really Star Wars movie information at the shareholder meeting outside of Patty Jenkins' Rogue Squadron.
Yeah, right.
But we've got some news here. So Deadline is reporting that Michael Waldron, if you don't know that name, that's okay. But just so you know, he is the writer behind Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, which is the new Doctor Strange movie coming out this year. I think it's this year that's coming out.
Yes.
But we haven't seen that yet. So, of course, if you don't know him, that's understandable. And he is also the head writer on the Loki series.
Okay.
Now, this guy, again, we haven't seen anything that he's done, but Disney must love it because he has been tapped to write the script for the Star Wars movie that Kevin Feige will be in charge of. So maybe they're the new dynamic duo. We'll see.
Well, it's interesting that like he's going to be doing a Marvel movie. He's going to be doing a Star Wars show, and now he's going to be doing a Star Wars movie.
Well, a Marvel movie, a Marvel show, and a Star Wars movie.
Marvel movie, Marvel show, Star Wars.
Right.
Yes.
Backwards,
reverse it, flip it around. Yeah.
Exactly.
You got
it. Additionally, it is all but confirmed that what we thought was going to only be one season of Loki is going to be at least 2.
Ooh, really?
So the deal has been struck.
Okay, dude, that makes me so happy.
For a second season of Loki.
I think out of all the Marvel shows that are going to be coming out this year, I think that's the one I'm most excited for.
Oh, for sure. I am stoked. Though I'm really excited for WandaVision. I'm not gonna lie, just kind of based on what I've seen and what I'm reading.
Yeah.
That's gonna be awesome. But hey man, we get some Star Wars information, new Marvel information kind of in the same report. So we're getting some crossover, some kind of bleeding between the two Disney, core franchises.
So do you think then the reason that this writer's being tapped to write the Star Wars movie, do you think it's just because Kevin Feige's been working with this guy long enough now, like seeing the scripts obviously that he's writing for, the Doctor Strange movie and then for the Loki series, that he's just kind of going like, this guy gets it, kind of like how Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau work together, right?
Yeah.
Like I just wonder if there's like that sort of like symbiotic relationship that's developing there.
The guy, none of it's been released, but there's so much chemistry there that Kevin Feige's like, I'm in. What I love about Kevin Feige too is, he's got such a clear vision of what he wants to do, and then he just makes it. Much like Jon Favreau, right? He knows what he wants to do and he just makes it. There's not a lot of milling around. With Star Wars over the last decade, it's a lot of milling around, I feel like. We're going to do this show. Wait, it's been delayed 65 years. Oh, we're going to do this movie. It's been delayed and now it's not going to happen at all. I'm like sick of that crap. Like, put somebody who knows what they're doing and just go for it. So I'm very happy to see, the names of Kevin Feige and Taika Waititi, 2 people that we trust that are going to make the movie.
Yeah.
Like in charge. And so it's all good news, and a Loki season 2. Just a little cherry on top.
I'll take it. That's good news. I love it.
Yes.
I love it. Okay. You remember that new content creating platform called Quibi? Do you remember?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Do you remember how I think it was like in 2018 we started talking about this thing, and then in 2019 like it actually debuted, and then it was supposed to be like content that was 10 minutes or shorter, right? And there was going to be some small creators, but then there was also going to be some like big studios that were getting behind it. Like there was like something with Sophie Turner in it. And there was, just a bunch of like little things, and there's supposed to be all this content, and you're going to want to get little bite-sized bits and check out a 10. I remember looking at this like forever ago going, this just seems weird. Yep. Well, big surprise. The streaming service shut down.
Yeah.
Quibi's no more. Roku has gone out though and purchased the Quibi library of content.
Okay.
And this was interesting to me because I was like, what is there? And apparently there's like 75 of these short form stories.
Whoa.
And I was like, wow, like
Okay.
they actually made more content than I thought. But
Okay, yeah.
Roku bought it, and apparently they're not exactly disclosing the true cost, but they're saying it's significantly less than $100 million.
Okay.
So I when I hear significantly less than $100 million, my question is, are you trying to like make it sound bigger? Like if it's 50, why not just say it was $50 million?
Right.
Or if it's 20 million, why not just say
Yeah.
$20 million instead of saying like significantly less than 100 million? Because my significant, your significant could be, oh, it was 75 million. Like it just kind of seems
Yeah.
a little weird, but apparently, you know, Sophie Turner's Thriller, Survive is there. Chrissy Teigen had this courtroom comedy called Chrissy's Court that they're talking about, and apparently Roku's going to take all of that, and I think from what I've seen, Roku is going to be giving away this content if you own a Roku device. Like you'll just have it. But
Oh, on like the Roku channel or whatever.
yeah,
it's
like on the
called?
Roku channel, or if
Okay.
you have a Roku box or whatever. But the interesting
Right.
thing is like this service, when it launched, it had like $2 billion in financial resources. Like you gotta remember, like this thing went and like they got money from all these investors and the big names,
Yeah.
like, you know, Jeffrey Katzenberger was a co-founder of this. Like Steven Spielberg developed something for this. Like the Russo brothers did like a docu series. Like they like there was a lot of people who put a lot of money into this, thinking this was going to be the next big wave of content and entertainment.
Yeah.
And they sold it for significantly less than $100 million.
I'm surprised anybody bought it. I don't know what the heck they were thinking.
I feel bad for the investors. Like
Such a stupid idea.
it seemed very risky to me, and to see that it didn't pan out wasn't a surprise. I don't know if any of the Super Friends watched any of that. If you have, like, drop me a line. Like I'd be curious to see, but like in today's market where we've got big name players that have recently entered in, like Disney and HBO, and now like you know NBC with their Peacock service, like we're at this place where I think it's gonna be really, really hard for a small startup, even though, trust me, like you know, $2 billion or whatever it was isn't exactly small change, but like it wasn't a big studio, it wasn't a big, you know, media conglomerate behind it. I think small companies are gonna have a hard time entering this space.
Yep.
So
Yep.
anyway, that's all I got on that. Is Quibi.
Quibi.
What
Never
can you
heard of
say?
anybody who's ever watched a single show on Quibi.
Neither have
That's
I.
not a good sign.
Neither have I.
So more not good signs, or good signs if you're me and you don't care. Ray Fisher.
Oh,
Just go back
here
to
we
this
go
one
again.
last time, hopefully.
Good
He's
Lord,
no
this
longer
guy.
going to be in the Flash movie. There you go.
Okay.
I think we can just, like we talked about last week, we can expect that he will no longer be part of anything that DC does.
Yeah.
It's over.
Yep.
He's done with playing Cyborg, and he may have just heard his career in such a way that it is, I don't know, not a great way to be a young whatever. So we talked about this at length last week about our opinions on how he handled it, whether the allegations are true or not. You know, that doesn't change the way you act in a situation or react in a situation. And he's paying for it. So he was going to have at least a cameo in the Flash movie. He was not in it. So that's that. We'll never see him again, and they'll just may not even write him out. He may just disappear and nobody will care.
Yeah. Yeah, because we really don't know how they're going to handle some of that in the context of the movie and the script. Right. And you're right. They may not even address him at all, and they may just move completely on, and that wouldn't surprise me.
No, me either.
Okay, Matt, I've got something for you I found really, really interesting. So Dave Bautista, wrestler turned actor, right?
Yes.
We all know Dave Bautista for his role as Drax the Destroyer in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies.
Yep.
So the interesting thing is Dave Bautista basically is like he's James Gunn's guy. Like James Gunn was the first one to put him in a big movie, took a gamble on him, took a risk on him, and really like gave him a career in the industry. Right. So yes. He said that like he will do anything for James Gunn. When James Gunn was fired by Disney originally, after some of the social media stuff and Twitter stuff came back from like 10 years earlier, and the whole cancel culture thing and whatnot, and Disney let him go before they rehired him again. Basically, Dave Bautista said like and he wasn't the only one, but he did say like I will not return to this role if James Gunn isn't there. I'm gonna do whatever James Gunn does, whatever he wants me to do. And he was like that adamant about it. And of course, James Gunn's back on for Guardians 3. And of course, Dave Bautista's back on for Guardians 3. Here's the interesting thing. James Gunn has got another movie coming up. It's called Suicide Squad. He's doing a movie over for DC. And apparently, James Gunn asked Dave Bautista to be in it. And he said no. He said at the time that he was looking for like juicier scripts, and he was looking for something that was a little more interesting and this and that. Okay. And so he took a role in the upcoming Zack Snyder Netflix zombie heist film, Army of the Dead. And so I thought this was really kind of funny because I mean whatever he's doing with this Army of the Dead, I'm sure it'll be fine. But I just kind of thought it was really funny where he's like, I'm James Gunn's guy. Like, that's my guy. Da, 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 da. And then he was like, hey, I got a role for you. It's not probably the biggest role. And he's like, well, hold on a second. My career's actually, on the up and up right now. And you're still my guy, but I'm going to go do this other thing. I just kind of found it funny. Like it's not a slight to James Gunn. They're gonna work together in Guardians 3. Like the relationship is good, but it just was kind of funny to me. Where it's like, I'm his guy. Oh, wait a minute. No, I don't want. I don't
in this situation.
Not for Suicide Squad. Now, you and I have talked at length that we think that if James Gunn is involved, that the Suicide Squad movie has a chance of being good.
Right.
We know the other one wasn't. We know the other one was hot garbage. It was a mess.
And mention that later on.
So anyway, Dave Bautista's getting a little choosy, but he's still coming back as Drax the Destroyer. So don't worry, Super Friends.
Okay, interesting. Okay.
Yep.
Well, I've got one last thing here.
Okay.
It has to do with some casting and directing information as well. So the Marvel TV show that I'm most excited about that I don't know anything about is Moon Knight. It just sounds cool and he looks cool. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
Now we mentioned a little while back that it was rumored that Oscar Isaac may be the main character.
Right, yes.
It's now been seemingly confirmed that is the case by the cinematographer.
Is this one of those confirmations where it's like,
it was an confirmation?
Yeah, everyone kind of knows it, except Marvel and Disney haven't officially said it.
Yes. So this was in an Instagram post. The cinematographer said, "Oh, the secret's out. I'm working on Moon Knight. I'm so excited to be working along the talents of somebody like at Oscar Isaac." And it was like, oh, well,
whoops.
Not so much a secret now.
Oh, that's so funny.
In some of the best news of the day for me, I want Oscar Isaac in more stuff. He was, again, criminally underused in the trilogy for Star Wars.
Yep.
I'm very excited that he's getting his own show where he gets to play a complex character. And that's not the only bit of information. So we are getting some more directing information. Now we know that the filmmaker Mohammed Diab is going to kind of be the head of Moon Knight,
Right.
but the information has now been confirmed that Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead are going to be working on the series as well. Now you may say, I've never heard of them, and you would be probably
I've heard of
understandably
Alan Moorhead,
right.
I think.
Well,
Anyway.
that is not who this is.
Ah, dang it.
So, but there may be some of you who say, "Oh, yes, I know them," and the reason they are this kind of this cult. They have like a little bit of like a cult following in the indie industry.
Okay.
So they've been behind a couple of sci-fi horror movies that are of the kind of the indie scene that you may or may not have heard of. I've never heard of these, and I like horror movies.
You said sci-fi. I'm like, I'm in, and then you said horror. I'm like, I'm out. So I know. I'm not gonna know them. Yeah.
The Endless and Synchronic are the two biggest ones.
Sure.
Apparently.
Yeah.
So they're going to direct a bunch of episodes. So it's going to be really, I mean, that the sci-fi horror aspect makes you think, okay, at least in my mind, Moon Knight is going to be what I expect it to be, which is a darker tone for Marvel.
Right.
This kind of confirms that. And the fact that we're seeing Marvel exploring so many different genres right now, with the sitcom format coming up, followed by the horror with Multiverse of Madness, and I think we're going to see this taken in a really interesting direction. And it's just cool. They're hiring indie filmmakers, Oscar Isaac, and an Egyptian filmmaker to make this really cool series. So I'm excited about it, and we'll see where it goes.
It sounds very unique and different, and I'm okay with that because I think we need more unique and different stuff. I think the MCU has built such a strong foundation that they can start straying a little bit from some of the mainstream kind of things they've been doing and starting to get into some of these other properties that they own that are a little different. I mean, like I said, I went back and I've said it all along. Iron Man was not an A-list superhero in the Marvel verse for a long time. 2008 comes around, that old Iron Man movie changes everything.
Right.
And all of a sudden everyone knows Iron Man, everyone knows Robert Downey Jr. It was a thing. So I think we're at a point though where Marvel can do some stuff. They can bring in some characters and some lesser knowns and make them into bigger things and breathe some life into those properties. And I think that's a great thing. Yep.
I'm excited about it. Go Oscar Isaac. Let's get some weird stuff in Marvel. And I think we're getting it.
I'm out. I don't have anything else for Rebel Intelligence, but on the whole Oscar Isaac thing, you know how we're going to get that Rogue Squadron movie? We don't know what setting it's going to be. Pre sequel trilogy.
You just got me really excited by what you just said.
If there's a chance that they could go post Return of the Jedi, Rogue Squadron, bring in some of the stuff from those books, but then they insert Poe Dameron in there, and he could be part of the fabled legendary Rogue Squadron, and he was in that movie. Ooh.
Now you got my mind spinning.
I'm telling you, that's exciting.
And I hate it. Because I'm disappointed when Lucasfilm inevitably lets me down.
Yeah.
We'll see.
That's true. All right, Matt, let's get out of Rebel Intelligence. Let's go over to the question of the week. So,
yes.
Last week we were talking, we played the whole game of superpower would you rather. Which would you rather have? Invisibility or flight? Super hearing or telepathy, all these things, right?
Right.
And we asked that question, and I got it out today. I'm going to admit, I got it out late. So we do have a couple answers. I also forgot, though, Matt, you brought up a question from Cobra Kai.
Yes.
Are you Miyagi-Do? Are you Cobra Kai? And I didn't ask that. So sorry.
That's, you know what? It's okay. We can save that for when we should review Cobra Kai season 3.
We might need to do that. We really
Maybe
might
we
just
should.
need to do that. But we do have some answers, so let's get over to them. Let's start over at the email, which is fortofnerd@gmail.com. We've got Peter Christensen. He says, Dear Nerds, I will second Matt's recommendation of Ted Lasso. Even if you hate Apple, it's worth paying $5 for 1 month of Apple TV Plus to watch the short 10-episode season. It's the feel-good, positive show that 2020 needed, and it's hilarious to boot. Seattle did something cool and different for New Year's Eve, since gatherings are prohibited. They made a 3D model of the Space Needle, designed trippy animations around it, then overlaid that animation on cameras placed at different places, so it looked like TV viewers saw this amazing light show surrounding the needle. The description doesn't do it justice. It was so much cooler than any fireworks show, and a brilliant way to use the constraint of no gathering to make something even better. If you Google New Year's at the Needle 2021 and skip to 44 minutes and 40 seconds, it is a sight to see.
Nice.
Matt, Saved by the Bell did get better than the first episode,
Okay.
but it didn't stop being corny.
Okay. I was waiting to get reamed by Peter. I'm glad he didn't ream me because I went hard on that show and I felt a little bit bad.
Just a little bit, though.
That's all. I mean, yeah, just not enough to not say it.
No.
Obviously.
Spencer, I think it's time, or says, I think it's perfect that you're watching How I Met Your Mother Season 9 before Cobra Kai, because the Machio Zabka reunion there is the spiritual prequel that led to the creation of Cobra Kai. I'd like to nominate Amanda Russo as a first ballot inductee into the Tammy Taylor Awesome Hall of Fame for outstanding TV wives and mothers. By the way, before I go on, I love the fact that now we are going to officially refer to this as the Tammy Taylor Awesome Hall of Fame for outstanding TV wives and mothers, because I agree. Tammy Taylor's the best.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to answer the question, I'm so much more Miyagi-Do. I aspire to have some of the Johnny Lawrence TV version of Cobra Kai. Kreese's version repels me. I've read a few discussions about what your choice of superpowers say about you. Basically, although any power could be used for good or evil, some are more usable for evil and some for good. For instance, flying is more useful for exploring and getting more done with your life, while invisibility or X-ray vision are used to be places where you shouldn't see or to see things you shouldn't. I don't totally buy it, but it's an interesting frame. Here are my choices for the superpower choices you discussed. Flight versus invisibility, I'd take flight. Barely days passed since I found Microsoft's Terra server in 2001 that I haven't explored a satellite photo of somewhere on the Earth. I did enjoy the mental image of Spencer's kids screaming when they opened the pantry and saw a floating, disappearing Pop-Tart. True, that would be funny. Super hearing versus teleportation. Teleportation, same as flight. Regeneration versus super speed. Regeneration. I would be a lot more bold if injury had no consequences. That's very true. Electricity versus camouflage. I would choose electricity so I could zap the people who got to choose from two cooler powers. That's funny. I like that. Stretchy versus learn instantly. Stretchy. Not because I care a lot about it, although it would be nice to touch my toes. Learning instantly would be handy, but so much of the work and challenges in the world are mental, and everything would get so boring. So fast learning for free, Also, learning something doesn't necessarily mean you have the wisdom or the capability to do anything with that knowledge. And last, telepathy versus shape-shifting. Telepathy, but only if it was default off, and I got to choose to use it. I go crazy being bombarded with my own thoughts. I wouldn't want to be flooded with everyone else's as well.
Right.
I was a little surprised that super strength wasn't on the list. That's one of the canonical superpowers. In practice, I don't think it would be that useful. I'm already significantly stronger than my wife and children, and that just means there are more jobs that only I can do. So my choice for superpower would be flying. It's the most fun and the only power on that list that would be its own reward. Everything else is only good if you can use it for something. Cheers, Peter Christensen.
Thank you, Peter.
I think yes. I think
As
Matt.
always.
I think Matt. The reason why we didn't choose super strength is because it just seemed so like so obvious to me. Like, and I think if I looked at anything else that I would have looked at, if I was comparing it to super strength, I think would have lost to super strength, except for maybe like flying and teleportation.
Right.
Because super strength, like, you could do anything, almost virtually anything with that. So let's go over to the Discord, Fortress of Nerditude Discord. We've got Tim Pollin. He says, I still say time travel. Biff was dumb. I got this. Trisha said she wants to be invisible just so she can go mess with people. So I like that Tim wants time travel because he thinks just Biff is an idiot, and so he's going to do it right. But his wife wants to be invisible so she can go mess with people. I just love that. And then we got
Beautiful.
Chief_Findog. Chief says, maybe not a power, but I want a TARDIS. But if it's a power specifically, it would have to be Force Lightning. He wants
the superpower or the force power.
So I'm gonna alter it and just say, the ability to control electricity then. Because yes, we're not including the Force, because if the Force was in there, I could use the Force to pretty much do almost all of those other things.
Yeah.
So it's kind of
Jesse,
it's kind of a MacGuffin, right?
Jesse was listening to the podcast last week live, and when I went to bed, she was like, those were really cool ones, but I want is it telekinesis?
Where you can move stuff with your mind?
Yeah. She's
Yeah.
like, that's easy. What I would choose. That's like number one. I was like, that's a good point. I didn't think about that.
Yeah. I'm still standing by regeneration, and give me those adamantium claws. I'm just saying.
That's not part of the deal.
They're not a superpower.
Sorry.
They're just an add-on.
Accessory.
They're an accessory.
Jeez.
It's a surgical enhancement, okay? Matt, don't body shame me, okay?
Oh my
Just
God.
because I want adamantium claws.
Oh, gosh.
Super friends, thank you so much for your answers. You know how much we love hearing from you and answering the question of the week. I do apologize again for not mentally realizing that if we were recording a day earlier, I needed to put out the question of the week call a day earlier. We will do better next week. So thank you so much. Matt, our super friends come through for us each and every week. They listen to the podcast. They're showing up live when we record on Twitch. How can they help us this week? What can they do for us?
Continue to listen, like, comment, subscribe, email, leave a voice message. Do all the great things that you do. We appreciate it. Answering the question of the week, we love it. It's fun to hear from all y'all, man. It's a blast. Love hearing what y'all have to say. I like to sit here because, we host the show and just be able to share my opinion and comment on it, and you can't defend yourselves. Except in the next week. So it's an open dialogue, and we appreciate it.
Yep.
This is a safe space to share your opinions, even if I think they're wrong.
I like how you say it's a safe place to share your opinions, but I'm going to share my opinion and you can't fight back.
I'm answering you.
Yeah.
And there's nothing you can do. No, kidding, obviously. Thank you. We love it. The interactions are super fun. It's super, super, super friendly.
I took that as you saying you censor me, not the super friends. Like, you're pulling the reins back on me from letting me just like run wild and do all sorts of craziness.
That's true too, y'all. You don't know how hard this job is.
You're not getting paid enough, Matt.
That's true.
I'm gonna say that right now. You're not getting paid enough.
That's true. Yeah. But other than that, stay hydrated and drink water and don't get COVID.
Good call.
That's the little extra that I've got. Good call. For you.
And don't do drugs.
Don't do drugs.
That's my line from City Slickers all the time when the parent teacher, like the parent day when they come in, they're like, the kid's like, and I lifted this crane off this lady and and all the kids are just like, and then he's like, and the moral of the story is, don't do drugs. had nothing to do with the story. I love it. Anyway, shout out to like 1990, 1991 City Slickers reference. I know that's very, very topical these days with the kids.
Oh yeah.
Matt, we had a bit of news this week that we thought was really interesting that we would want to get into and have a discussion. So I'm gonna give the news, and then we're gonna talk about our feelings on this and how we would interact with this. So, for instance, this week there was some information that was dropped. Right, we know a Flash movie is coming up, and we know that they're gonna do a Flashpoint type of story where Barry Allen's gonna go back into time and either mess something up or something's going to come together, and basically we're going to get like a multiverse. So kind of like how we're getting the multiverse over in Marvel with Doctor Strange and Spider-Man, they're kind of going to be going to the multiverse aspect over in the DCEU. And we know that we're going to be getting 2 different versions of Batman. They're going to be showing up in this film. And it's been rumored and confirmed that Michael Keaton's Batman is going to be in the movie. And we're not quite sure if the other Batman version is going to be the Ben Affleck, the Batfleck version, if you will.
Right.
And if there's a possibility we also may get the Robert Pattinson Batman movie. And so like we kind of know this is going on, but there was an issue where there was a writer. I'm trying to think if it was a writer or someone who was interviewing one of the writers was asking some questions about Batman and what's going on, because there's going to be 2 Batman for sure in this movie.
Yeah.
And then they said that going forward after this, there's going to be 2 Batmen in the DCEU. And of course, that's like kicked off this huge speculation that Michael Keaton's not just recurring the role he played as Batman in this Flash movie, but that he's potentially going to be in another Batman movie, or maybe starring in a few of them. And of course, like all this went off, and the person who was writing this thing basically said like, hey, sorry, I was moving apartments, in Manhattan, and my phone had been off, and what I really meant was that just this movie's going to have 2 that I don't know anything else about, other ones and other things, and running 2 different actors at the same time, because we know that there's kind of this shift where we have, I don't even know how to call this, like the main DCEU kind of thrust of movies, and then we have like these like one-offs, like the Batman with Robert Pattinson is kind of like its own separate thing, and the Joker movie that came out, Joker, was its own separate thing and not in the DCEU proper. And so our topic tonight is the fact that we've said this over and over and over again, and I don't think anyone disputes it, and we just heard that Wonder Woman 1984 has now been certified as rotten by Rotten Tomatoes. The DCEU has a problem. And they're all over the map. They don't have any continuity. Things are, one-offs that are characters that exist in this world, but they're actually like separate universes, and they don't belong in this world. And these movies are losing money. Yeah. Except for a very, very select few.
Yeah.
DC needs help. Jeff Johns is like on his way out after the whole Ray Fisher thing. We know that Warner Brothers has been very heavy-handed in a lot of these DC movies where the upper-ups are, really trying, like, you gotta have this, and you gotta make sure it's got a moral, and you gotta make sure you got a dog in the movie, and you gotta make sure that Green Hornet finds a way in there, and we're gonna get Green Lantern in there because we own that. They just, try to do this by committee, and then we end up getting something like Batman v Superman. Right. And it's just this mess, right? So here's the thing, Matt. how do we, if you and I were in these shoes and we've got all this stuff going on, how can DC movies be saved? What can we do if we were in charge? How are we going to save the DCEU? That's
Jeez.
that's what I think we need to
Yes.
talk about, because we got to stop looking at the negatives. We got to start finding a way that, like, how potentially they could unravel this, like, chain of awfulness that they've got going on, where 1 out of 6 movies is successful.
Right. Yeah, I mean, this was tough because DC has I think there are so many problems. It's not just one problem.
Yeah.
And in watching, it was interesting because in watching movies this week, which I watched a lot of because there was a lot of Hobbit and a lot of Lord of the Rings,
Right.
it brought other things to light as I thought about the podcast discussion topic we were going to have, and why films like Lord of the Rings were so successful, so loved, and why the DC movies suck.
Yeah.
There's a lot. There's a lot that they're just not doing right.
Yeah, sure.
And in my mind, I don't know that there's a way. I don't know that there is a way forward without blowing it all up. I mean, and I know that there is, and I guess this mind that I can just blow it all up and start completely from fresh.
Right.
Because here's where you and I, it'll be an interesting discussion, because you know more about DC comics, you know more about the DC characters, and you care about them more. I am coming at this from a point of I like superhero movies.
Right. Yep.
And that's about where I'm at with this. I grew up liking Batman, right? I mean, that's that
Yeah.
I'm a product of the 80s and 90s. I like Batman because that's really all that there was. So we're going to have different opinions and different thoughts, and I know that, which is going to make this discussion really interesting. So I don't even know where to begin, but I'll tell you where I would begin,
Okay.
and at least what hero I would begin with, and that's Superman. Superman is arguably
is kind of where they started this current.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So I would redo and reboot Superman. And this is coming from a casual perspective of I would consider myself, as it pertains to DC, very casual. I've only seen maybe half of the movies because they don't appeal to me at all. So I'm coming at this from a very casual consumer.
Yeah.
Superman, to me, Man of Steel, everything that Henry Cavill's been a part of, I hate it. Like, it's not that I don't like it, I hate it. It's dark, brooding, boring, over the top.
And that's the Zack Snyder part.
Yes,
of,
the Zack
that.
Snyder
Yeah.
effect.
Yeah.
And so when I'm looking at Superman, I'm looking to reboot it. It's not fun.
Yeah.
To me. And you have to start off with something fun. You look at Iron Man. Iron Man was fun.
Yes.
Over the top, crazy, charismatic, selfish, but you can relate, and he comes out as something different, right? He becomes this hero in a different way. Superman needs something new. You can't keep making Superman, in my opinion, okay, a straight-laced, boring superhero, which to me is what Superman is. And I know that that's not fair because I haven't seen the old movies or the comics or whatever, but the average person, that's what we think. I asked Jessie, and she was like, yeah, Superman is the most boring major character in all of superhero-ness. And that,
so,
I know that probably hurts you.
No, I mean, no, like that's a fair criticism. And it's fair, but like you also have to go back and realize, like, Superman was created in like the late 1930s. And so it's like this, the character is this product of like, we needed someone to look up to. When he was written, it was, we need someone to look up to. We need someone to uphold like the best ideals of America, right?
Okay,
Truth,
yeah.
justice, and the American way, right? Like it's,
Yep.
And so like he was supposed to be this shining beacon of that. So they didn't want to give him like things like, okay, so for instance, compare like Wolverine, right? Like Wolverine's a hero, but like Wolverine has lots of character flaws. Wolverine
Yes.
has, you know, he chews on a cigar, he cusses, he uses a lot of slang, he's this kind of anti-hero hero.
Yep.
Superman was designed at a time where like that concept didn't even exist. So it's Superman's like, you have to have a shot. I mean, that's why they put a big freaking huge symbol on his chest, is because you need to look at him and be like, that's the symbol that means, truth, justice, the American way, that he's going to stand up for what's right. He's never going to, going to lay down for things that are wrong and whatnot. And this is like pre-World War, like pre-entry of the United States into World War II. And you had all these things going on over in Europe and whatnot. And so like that idea, like but it does make him feel very dated, even though we've seen him in films and television shows, in the 50s and 70s and 80s and 90s and, beyond. The character, you can't really change the character too much without breaking the character or completely upsetting the fan base so much that they just won't get behind it. It's like saying, hey, we're going to take Spider-Man, instead of starting him off as a teenager, which Spider-Man's supposed to be a teenager, we're going to start him off as a 50-year-old dude. Like, no one's going to want to watch a 50-year-old Spider-Man.
And I agree with that. And that's, I mean, I get that these are tricky, and the people outside of, I don't know, outside of my experience are going to hold them sacred. And I get that. From an entertainment perspective, Superman is not an interesting character if he's always going to be a certain way. And I know walking into a Superman movie or a Superman comic or whatever situation he might be in, he's going to be a certain way. And that's boring.
I think, remember when we had a conversation during one of our Mandalorian sidekick podcasts where we talked about this idea of like the Mandalorian had a creed, our Mando had a creed, and like he had to make some really morally ambiguous choices that was like, no matter what way I go, I'm going to have to choose something that's going to break either my moral creed and the compass I have, or do this, but it's going to hurt a lot of people I care about. I think that is the kind of scenario that they need to put Superman into to make there some like real dilemma, some real struggle, something that you're like, oh man, what would I do in this position? I think that that's what needs to happen with that character.
I agree. When I think about it and I look at characters, my obviously my favorite superhero is Spider-Man, and I look at my favorite Spider-Man movie, which is Spider-Man 2, which is him having to make choices, losing his powers, and having internal struggle and conflict. And that's, to me, what's missing with somebody like Superman is he's just so rigid. I
wish you'd seen some of the old ones, because in Superman 2, Superman gives up his powers to be with Lois Lane, and it does. So that's the kind of stuff that cause that. Yeah.
And here's the deal with, and then, this to me is why he's central, right? We know that Superman is a central DC character. You have to get him. And if you don't get him right, then
you're in trouble.
You're going to fail. And that's why I feel like, I mean, Henry Cavill is a fine actor, but his scripts weren't good. And the way that they wrote Superman, in my opinion, isn't good.
Yeah, they tried to... They try to kind of continue on with the Dark Knight franchise and the way Christopher Nolan did it, and Zack Snyder tried to make things like dark and broody, and that's not Superman. I agree. But I am gonna tag on, like, if we're gonna fix DC and we're gonna fix these movies, you gotta start with what they call the Holy Trinity of characters in DC. Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman. Those three are the ones you have to build everything around. And I feel like they tried doing that because we got a Superman movie, and then we got the Superman v Batman, and I was like, oh gosh, no. Like, there wasn't a Batfleck Batman movie that was an independent movie, which I think was a mistake. And
Wonder Woman had,
the first outing of Wonder Woman had this this solo movie, but like that one came after the Justice League had come out, or after Batman v Superman.
After Batman v Superman, where she just shows up and you're like, what the
Right.
what's happening?
So here's my thing. In the comic books, there is because of Barry Allen, the Flash, who has the ability, he's a speedster. He can go super, super fast. But he can also travel back in time. There's an event that happens that's referred to as the Crisis on Infinite Earths. And it basically kind of creates this multiverse. I think what would be the best thing we could do would be to have a storyline that involves the Flash. So instead of like this Flash movie that's coming up, make it a Crisis of Infinite Earths, because we kind of hear that maybe that could be the case with these two Batman, but use that as the jumping off point to say everything that's come before in our movie verse is now old and gone. We've jumped into a different universe, a parallel universe, whatever. And that gives us the ability to recast roles, to make changes, and we don't have to be beholden to anything that's come before. I think that at this point is the only way from a narrative you could do that. Plus, that narrative has been told in the comics. It's how DC rebooted everything at one point here within the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years. They had something called the New 52. And that's when they basically said, like, we're going to take all of our comic books, every single one of them, and we're going to start over again. Because there had been comic books for decades. And who wants to go back and start reading Superman comics from like the freaking 30s to try to figure out his origin story? No, they did Crisis on Infinite Earths. They rebooted everything. I think that's what we have to do.
Yeah, and I leave it up to people like you who understand how it can happen to how we blow it up and start over. And that sounds like a great way to be able to blow it up and start over, and giving a way out to the rest of the movies.
So we blow this thing up, Matt. And I think you and I agree. We stick with the first three movies should be the holy trinity of DC: Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman. Right?
Right.
Okay. And here's my question: Do you recast those roles?
Yes.
All three,
absolutely.
or do you keep anyone?
Three, except Batman. I say you just make whatever Batman movie they're making because it looks cool. Robert Pattinson as Batman, I'm in. So in mine, when I'm looking at this, I'm recasting for sure Superman. Without a shadow of a doubt, I'm recasting Superman. Not because I don't like Henry Cavill, but because you can't keep him. He's been in too many of them, and when you see him, you think of a certain Superman. I don't think it works.
I agree. Unfortunately, I feel really sad by that, because I think he's cast really, really well as Superman, as Clark Kent. But the problem is, like, he needs better writing. He needs a better script. Like, the movie, the whole tone. And while I would love to see him, like, be the leap forward, I think you're right. Too many people mentally are going to associate him to the old thing. So sadly, I agree.
Right.
Henry Cavill's got to go. Gal Gadot,
she's great. Here's my thing with the DC movies, and when I was thinking about kind of rebooting them, I want to go younger across the board. I'm looking at Superman being young, like young 30s or 20s. Okay. My idea for Superman is somebody like Miles Teller. Young, engaging, interesting. I mean, I have like the Superman movie like already cast as Miles Teller with Lois Lane as Blake Lively. So I'm going younger and bigger names.
Okay.
And I'm going to go opposite of you with the casting. I guess for what Henry Cavill is and the script that he was given and the way that Superman is, I'm fine with that casting, but it needs to change.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm going with somebody a little more less straightforward, because Henry Cavill as Superman is like a perfect human, like tall, strong, handsome.
Oh, you look at him
in every way.
Yeah, you look at him, you're like, that's the guy. Yes, I agree.
Exactly. So that's why I'm looking for something more interesting. And that's why I look, And again, this is me being, in my opinion, I am not a fan of Amy Adams at all. One of my least favorite actresses in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And so for me, Superman is just a miss on every point. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm looking at somebody interesting that everybody loves, like Blake Lively. Capitalize on her popularity. That's, again, just my opinion. I know she doesn't
mean,
look like the traditional Lois Lane, and I don't care.
Well, that's okay. So that's, I think, part of the knock that was against Amy Adams. Like, because Amy Adams is a very beloved actress. She is very
Right.
popular, but she
is.
didn't
I don't
look
know
like
why.
Lois Lane, and Lois Lane,
Yeah.
like the character, she's kind of like a hard-edged news reporter. She's been a reporter for a little while. She really wants to like be the investigative journalist. Like, Amy Adams just didn't bring that to the role. So I agree. You got to go younger with your main three: Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman. Here's the thing. I think they all need solo films,
Absolutely.
but I don't think they need to be origin stories. Now, I will say that we really haven't got an origin story for Superman in a
That's
film
what I was going to say.
since
Yes.
1978.
We need the origins of Superman. I also have it for Batman. I don't care. But Superman, I'm with you because I'll be
Yeah.
honest. I know a lot about nerd stuff. I mean, I'm on this podcast for a reason.
Right.
But as it pertains to Superman, something about Krypton and him being an alien, but
Yeah.
I don't know anything beyond that. And he was raised in a farm in Kansas, but I can only say that I know that because of Smallville from when I was growing up.
I have to get you to watch the original. I understand the pacing is going to be slow, and I understand it's going to be a slog, but like it did a real good job because remember 1978. Okay, the caveat there is 1978. They did a real good job of doing an origin story of Superman. Like, you don't actually see him be Superman until you're like an hour and a half into the movie.
And that's what I'm looking for in a Superman movie.
Yeah, so I agree.
I don't want him to be flying around saving huge, massive, big bad, destroying billions of dollars of buildings and killing innocent people and them not even addressing it.
Right. I think the Superman can be an origin story. I think Batman, you don't want to go origin story. We've seen in the lexicon of like the zeitgeist of society, we've seen Batman origin stories integrated into the 89 Batman. We saw it integrated into the Christian Bale Batman. They integrated it into, we saw it in Batman v Superman. We saw it in the Lego Like, it's just like, okay, we all know how Batman becomes Batman. So I'm okay with having Batman be a little older. And we just recently got a kind of a Wonder Woman origin story in the first Wonder Woman movie. So I think we could not do an origin story there. But they need to have some way, and I mean a little way, of interconnecting those stories that are standalone. So like maybe we get a Superman movie that's an origin story, but by time he gets to Metropolis, by time he's a reporter and that's his cover, like at some point he covers a story in Gotham involving Bruce Wayne. And so that there's some sort of meeting. So like there's some sort of recognition, or somehow Superman gets involved in something that puts him on Batman's radar, and because Batman's already been established for a few years as Batman. Something like that. So I think that's fine. We established the Holy Trinity in standalone movies. I think since we're talking about this idea of having the Flash kick off a Crisis on Infinite Earths, I think you still keep Ezra Miller as the Flash. And I'll say the reason why is because if we're using that as a vehicle that kicks all this off, and then he ends up in this alternate universe where Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman don't know him yet, but he has all the memories of the things that came before, and he's kicked this off, it would be a really interesting way of seeing that character having, like, if you do a Flash movie after the Crisis on Infinite Earths. So like you get your Holy Trinity, you get Superman, you get Batman, you get Wonder Woman, then you have a Flash movie that gets put in there, and it's Ezra Miller's Flash trying to like figure out and deal with the fact that like he's in this other universe, or maybe he doesn't even have a movie, but maybe he just like shows up a little bit in these other three. Somehow you keep him cast as that, because otherwise it would be really weird. Like, this is the character that kind of kicks us all off to reboot everything, but then you recast him too. Like,
Right. I'm fine with that.
you have to have that continuity a little bit.
I'm saying, yeah, I'm good with that. I don't care about the Flash, and that's bad. Again,
It's
Ezra
it's
Miller,
because the
I
movies
really
haven't been
like.
good. Yeah, Ezra Miller's great.
And he was the only bright spot in the Justice. I was like, I'm in.
Yeah.
Because he's kind of funny. It's like, oh wow, there's one character in all of DC that has some type of like sense of humor or childlike. Everybody else is so straight.
I mean, Shazam had that.
So this is what and that's why I say this is, see, I came at this from a different angle. If we're gonna have to redo everything, that changes things. Because for me, Shazam stays as is. I would keep the movie exactly as it is. Zachary Levi is brilliant. He's perfect. I want him to stay as Shazam.
Yeah.
Like, that movie is my favorite DC movie so far. And that's why I keep that one. So somehow Zachary Levi doesn't get recast.
I agree. Zachary Levi is Shazam, and that whole movie was what it needed to be. But like, except for like the whole like the fact that they're in a world that has Superman already, they don't really mention anything else. So if you could have a way that like Shazam somehow gets pulled through into this Crisis in Infinite Earths and ends up in the other universe, and maybe has something to do with the power of Shazam and the magic or whatever,
right?
And you pull that through as well, I think you could do it. Or he opens up a portal and somehow gets himself over there and appears in the Flash movie, and he knows Ezra Miller's the Flash. I think that's fine too. That was the only one thing I thought, okay, out of all the stuff that I would be okay with moving over, it's Ezra Miller's the Flash because of the frame of how we're kind of setting up a whole reboot of all the DC franchise and movies. And Shazam because that one played really, really well. And I think you could find a way to do that. It's kind of the Doctor Strange magic ability. I kind of get that. Now, here's my next question. Okay, we've got standalone movies for the Holy Trinity. We maybe have a Flash movie. We can maybe bring in Shazam. Do you do an Aquaman movie?
No.
I'm so glad you said that.
Definitely not. What the heck?
I rewatched that. Now, Jason Momoa, I think, was cast perfectly as Aquaman. When he's in the Justice League, he's actually really fun to watch as Aquaman. When I watch the Aquaman movie, and I know I'm going to get some hate for this because I know it made a lot of money, but like when he's on the land and he's with his family and the little town folk, he's fun to watch. When he gets into the water and now we have battles with sharks that have armor on them and crabs with armor on them and like all that, like, to me, that just gets into way too goofy, campy of a look, and I didn't care for it at all. Like, I just didn't.
Right.
So like, for me, stay away from Aquaman. Like, don't go there. Obviously, I don't think we're going to do anything with Cyborg.
No.
No.
Nobody cares anyway. No, my whole thing was establishing, like you said, establishing the universe that we're in by making the three main characters good and interesting, better writing, more charismatic, more dilemmas internally for these characters.
Right.
Because even Wonder Woman, as much as I like there's not a lot. I'm not like, especially watching the second one, I couldn't have cared less if she lived or died because she's always doing the right thing again.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, I just miss characters that are more interesting. And so if you write it better.
I think that's what's missing. Like, we didn't get Batman. Like, the only Batman we got was Justice League and Batman v Superman in the current DCEU. Like, there's no real like Batman movie. And this that's the problem. And the Batman we are getting with Matt Reeves and what's his face is a standalone. Like the Robert Pattinson thing's
No, it is. I didn't even know.
Yeah,
that.
it's a standalone. It's not going to be part of that. So I'm kind of like,
Well, in my multiverse, that is the Batman movie. Also, I will say this: in the Batman movie that we get in our universe that we're making,
right.
you actually have Robin, and Robin is cool.
I love that
Just
idea.
throwing that out there.
Yes.
Like Robin
No.
not being there,
Yes.
it's an absolute like. Why are we not having Robin? I've got somebody cool playing Robin, like Zac Efron, like out of the blue, like this really cool guy, where he's not like a little brother. He's like a literal like sidekick, equal, like you know
Well,
what I mean, like not a less
yeah.
than character.
Well, and if we have this established Batman already, and we're not because I think a big part of the problem in the movies is a lot of them go back and do an origin story, so you really
Yeah.
can't have Robin be a big part of it. So if we have an established Batman who's been a Batman for a few years and he has the ward, he's got Robin there. I like that. I like that idea because that would be true to what that is. Now, in these three movies, do you go big villains right away? Do you go right to the key ones?
No, we're talking Vulture big.
Okay.
Not in my. So here's the other thing that I'm building toward is yes, we're going to have all of these movies. Each one of them, you're going to be putting away 1 to 2 minor bads.
Okay.
And I say that because this is culminating in phase. Okay, there's a whole lot going on here. How I'm envisioning this.
Oh, we're trying to fix it, Matt. That's okay.
We got Suicide Squad, and we're getting another one. But in my universe, that this second one, that this new one hasn't happened because we don't know what it's going to be like, and we haven't seen it. Suicide Squad is, to me, a bunch of characters I don't care about and don't know and don't care to know.
Okay.
So what I'm seeing is in each of these movies, we're getting introduced to more bad guys. They're not really bad, and they're not really big.
Okay.
The big bad is not revealed, so that by the time phase 2 rolls around, we get a Suicide Squad movie with bad guys that have been established. We know their backstory, we know their character, we know why they do what they do. That's my vision for where the Suicide Squad fits in to the DCEU that we are creating.
There's
a reason for it.
I've only thought about the villains on the Batman side because
those are the only ones I know. So single villain of
for
any
me,
other character.
For me, I looked at this and I said, okay, you've got to get Lex Luthor right for Superman, and you've got to get the Joker right for Batman.
Right.
You can toss in some of the Ares or some of the kind of the Greek gods for Wonder Woman, and you can kind of play it and get a little loose with that, right? Get Cheetah in there. I mean, I know Cheetah's a big thing, but for Batman, in the first standalone movie, I would have Harley Quinn be a minor villain. So like there's going to be a bigger villain, but Harley Quinn's going to be a minor villain that Batman ends up busting and tossing her into Arkham. I wouldn't necessarily go with the Harley Quinn origin story.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do that. But the reason I would do that though is because her Mr. J would be the one that ends up breaking her out later on in a follow-up Batman movie, and that would be the one where Joker would take an interest in Batman because Batman just put his love away and would want vengeance on him, and then realize how big of a threat Batman is against his criminal empire, or the chaos or whatever he wants, and that becomes the Joker becomes the big villain in the second movie. Don't go there right away. Build to it. Get there. Like, it's kind of the reason why, like, we saw Thanos in parts of the MCU, but we didn't really get to Thanos until we're like 10 years down the line.
Yes, so that's the deal. All of these have a big overarching bad that gets teased a little bit, whether it's a name or it's an event that happens somewhere in the universe. There's a tease, a Thanos type tease. And I I agree that we need to have. I don't know. I agree that Joker needs to be a part of it, but I think Joker is. Here's the problem with Joker. No matter what, you will get compared to the
Sure.
1989 and the Christopher Nolan.
Yeah, and the
I don't know
2009.
how
Yeah.
you get better. I just don't understand. There are two different versions, and unless you do a wildly different version, which they tried with Jared Leto, which was
Ugh.
terrible,
Yeah, rough.
I don't know where you go. And I would be hesitant to do anything with Joker for a while.
Well, and
I would do something interesting like the Riddler, who we haven't seen
yes,
portrayed well
right.
ever.
Yes, I mean that's the thing
Somebody
with Batman.
Crazy.
Yeah, Batman's his gallery of rogues. There's a lot, right? Like you've
And they're
got
cool.
you've got Joker, and I do think you get there, and maybe the Joker takes a little while, but like you got to get to the Joker at some
You
point.
do.
Fans would lose their
Tease it for a
collective
movie or
minds.
two.
Yeah, Riddler, Two-Face, Penguin,
Yep.
any of those right out the gate are fine. Lex Luthor, you got to get there with Superman. You
Yep.
got to get there
It's
because
gotta lead
that's
to him.
that's
Yep.
going to be the continual, back and forth, right? But I
Right.
think you can go with some lesser ones. You can go with the Brainiacs. You could go with something like that. Like I wouldn't get into the Mr. Mix-a-Pixel and do like the magic stuff. Like that's not the road we want to take. We want to have these based a little bit more quote unquote in reality. But you got to have something that's like there's some sort of driving force there. There's something that's going to cause some moral dilemma for those characters. It's going to push them, but then you get to the bigger bads. And then I think down the road, in my mind, you get to a point where it's not one big massive villain that shows up. It's not the dark side. It's not
Right.
something like that. You take the Joker and you take Lex Luthor and you put those two together.
Yeah.
And once that happens, then that's the cause for Batman and Superman to really have to come together and work together and have a crossover film, because it's going to be like, oh, these two Jokers, okay, maybe wrong term. These two individuals, the Joker and Lex Luthor, are now working together to cause problems in both Metropolis and Gotham. And we need to work together to figure this out and to solve these problems and stop what's going on, right? That's where I'm going to go eventually. As far as like all the other little things, like I know Green Lantern is a huge character in DC, and I know he's got a huge following. The problem is that the Green Lantern movie we got back a ways wasn't good. And we need to get, if we're going to have that character, it's got to be good. But the problem is that character exists in like, it's kind of the Guardians of the Galaxy, right? They're this patrol unit. The Lanterns are basically like this like cop unit that helps kind of police the galaxy, so to speak, and they have like these sectors and whatnot.
Right.
If you're going to get them involved, you can't get them involved until there's a bigger external threat. There's something else, which is how they brought the Guardians into the crossover in Infinity War Endgame, right? Like you had to have this bigger threat. Like maybe you could do a Green Lantern standalone, something to kind of put it out there after you've established all of the main storylines on Earth, but you can't right out of the gate. You'd ruin it. That'd be bad.
Yeah, and that's what I think. This is my problem with what DC has done. They just go out there and right away, they're like, I'm just going to go for it. Batman v Superman. You're like, what?
Right. No build up. No build up.
In what world? We don't care about this Batman or this Superman because you haven't given me a reason to care about them.
Yeah.
And when I'm looking at, when you're talking about how do we fix the DC movies and the DCEU or whatever you call it.
Right.
For most of us, we don't care about the version of these characters portrayed.
Yep.
Most, in my opinion, obviously Wonder Woman was amazing. My
first
favorite one is Shazam, and it's because I'm given like a whole movie or he does anything really crazy, to care about him.
Yeah.
And his situation and the kid and like
Right.
what his story is. We get a great movie by itself with a character that is interesting and unique.
Yep.
And that's what you have to do with, which is I think what we're trying to fix, is the movies suck individually and they suck collectively as a whole.
Yeah.
There are some movies that are individually great. Wonder Woman 1 is great and Shazam is great. Every mediocre or terrible.
Yeah.
In my opinion. I know there's people who like the Superman movies. I don't like them. I don't get it. And so if you're going to fix it, you've got to do what we've mentioned. You got to cast it right.
Yeah.
You got to get
cast
the right
it young.
director.
You got to cast
young.
You got to cast
Henry
younger.
Cavill was great. He's too old.
Yeah.
Ben Affleck is a good actor, but holy crap, way too old in my opinion.
In fairness though, they did want to have a Batman who'd been like 20
agree,
years in
but
Gotham.
It's wrong to me. Like that's not the right route to take.
I understand. Yep.
I want a younger Batman.
Yep.
And then
plus if you cast him young, Matt, you got the added bonus of like, if this thing kicks off and is doing well, they're locked into longer contracts so that like, 10 years down the road, Batman doesn't look like he needs a walker to get around Gotham. Like we don't need that. I agree.
Yep. So I think, in these movies, I'm not going for like, X-Men First Class or anything.
Right.
But almost, if you know what I mean. Like,
yeah,
they have little, like this Batman is young and he has a little bit of experience, but not a ton.
Yeah.
He's really needs guidance.
He's been on the job a year or two at most.
Exactly.
And so he really hasn't had a big case, so to speak. Like lots of little things, right?
Absolutely. So that's kind of, and the same thing with like Wonder Woman. I'm looking at somebody who either is young or looks young. Somebody like Allison Brie would play the character very differently, which is what it needs if you're going to get away from Gal Gadot or Gal Gadot or however she says it.
Right. Gal Gadot.
I just want something less rigid. As much as I like those movies, so rigid. So I love it. I think that the overarching theme of having, these baddies being introduced in minor roles and then getting more and more major, and then the team up culminating in an event where we have multiple superheroes involved. I'm in.
Right. And I think you get to the Suicide Squads, but that's like 8 years
way down.
8 years down the road. Yeah, 8 years down the road. The other thing, I think the biggest part of this problem of rebooting everything, using a Crisis on Infinite Earths as like the linchpin, is that you got to get Warner Brothers to say we're gonna give someone the reins and we're gonna step back.
Yeah.
Because I feel like the biggest villain in the current DCEU is Warner Brothers. It's the studio itself, because they look at these characters as a property to make money only, and they look at him as like Superman's value is X dollars, Batman's value is X dollars based on previous movies, and you need to look at it as a character and say, look, we're trying to tell interesting stories, we're trying to tell an overarching story, we're trying to get to a place where we can build a foundation that if you have a so-so movie, it's not going to tank the entire operation. And I think that that's what they need. And I think Warner Brothers has got to get hands off and stop looking at it as this is just dollar signs, but it's stories. Like, I go back to the MCU. Civil War has its own feel compared to like the Winter Soldier. Like the Winter Soldier is like a 1970s kind of spy thriller feel, whereas like the first Ant-Man is a heist movie. And then you go to like, Captain America, and that's a period piece World War II movie. Like you just have these like different feels to these things, and I think that they've done that well. I don't know that necessarily would work with Warner Brothers with trying to make like, a Batman detective movie, spy thriller. That works.
Right.
But you're not going to be able to just be like, hey, here's a Green Lantern heist movie, because that character is supposed to be basically like a space cop.
Right.
So that doesn't work unless he's, on the other side of the heist. Like then you've got to, then you're not relying on the character of the Green Lantern, you're relying on the villain. So I think there's a way that it could be done in the DC verse, which I would call it the DCU.
Yeah.
I know that would be too much of a direct ripoff of the MCU, but the DC universe.
Right.
Or the DCMU, the DC movie universe, something.
Sure.
Because they've got their whole TV stuff, what they just kind of refer to as the
Yeah.
Arrowverse because of the show that started all of that, and that's been doing well. Like the TV stuff has done well, but they just can't get it right for the movies. So that's where I'm coming from. Is there anything else you can think of if we're rebooting all these DC movies? Anything else that you think we're missing that we still need to like put in to kind of get rolling? Because I feel like once it kind of gets going, kind of like the MCU, it's gonna really get going.
You've got to get the 1 or 2 movies right, and you got to spend the money, and you got to get the, Hans Zimmer. You got to get the big names for the music.
Yeah, the score's got to be well.
Really good theme going, because when I think about DC, I can't think of a single bit of music.
John Williams Superman theme. And
I don't know what it is.
Dun 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Oh my gosh, Matt, you're just killing me. You're just killing me right now.
What was that from? Was that from one of the new ones or from...
No, it's from the 1978. It's
okay,
like,
that's what I'm saying though.
But it's John freaking Williams. Like I can't believe you haven't heard that. Or the
about Superman.
The Danny Elfman Batman theme.
Okay, but now we're talking the old movies.
I get it, but I'm saying like as an example, those older movies had big musical scores and themes. So like when you hear dun 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 dun, you know Batman is coming on screen.
Right.
You hear Superman, Superman is coming on screen.
Yeah.
There's nothing in these new movies that says, "Hey, we're about to see Batman enter the frame here." You're right. We need a big theme. We need big composers. We need music that's going to like tie all that together. Yes.
I mean, look at that gamble for Batman. Tim Burton, a relative unknown at the time, like really kind of a weird guy. Yep. I'm just looking at it and I'm like, man, DC is just doing it all right. So basically to everybody at DC, do exactly what you're doing, but do the opposite.
Do the reverse.
And then you're going to make a really great one. Like do a George Costanza. Like anything you think you should be doing, try the opposite.
Do the opposite.
Probably work out.
I think you hit it on the head, the music, adding that in. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I could think of that would need to be added in. And I really don't. I think you gotta
have to. You don't have to. No. They're making it harder than it needs to be by trying to hit home runs with every movie.
Yeah. Start with the main 3 and build from there.
Yes, and just make good movies.
Yeah. And you said you would start with a Superman movie, right?
I would, because I think he's had the longest streak without a really good movie.
Yeah, I agree. I think I could either go one of 2 ways. I think you're probably not wrong with having a Superman movie, younger Superman origin story being the kickoff, or you could kick it off with Batman, because we haven't had a really standalone Batman since the Nolan stuff. Batman in the current it's just been this. And if you start with him already being established as Batman a year or 2 into it, I think that's a good place. That could also be a starting point for what we're going to call our DCU or DCMU, whatever we're going to go with it. I mean, we're making this up. This is our imagination, right? So I think that's it. I don't know that there's anything else I would put into this where they would start.
I'm good. I've gotten everything chest.
But my question is to the super friends that are listening to the podcast, and this is going to be our question of the week. If you were rebooting the DC movie franchise, a complete fresh restart, what movie do you start with? What character? Like, that's what I want to know, because like I said, I think Superman's a great place to start. I could also see Batman, but maybe maybe, we're coming at this a different way than what you would think, Super
Yeah.
Friends. And so we want to hear from you. Do you want to see Aquaman kick the thing off? Do you want to see Flash? Do you want to see Green Lantern? Do you want to see a Cyborg movie? I mean, I don't know what you want, but we want to hear from you because we do want to know what you want, and we can talk about that next week. Now, a reminder, Super Friends, you can get us on our email, fortofnerd@gmail.com, facebook.com/fortofnerd, Twitter @fortofnerd, Instagram fortofnerd, on the Fortress of Nerditude Discord. You also can call in that old voicemail number, 801-477-7687, and leave us a voicemail. Smoke signals, a bat signal would work this week. I mean, I'll take that. Carrier pigeons, ravens, whatever you want to do. Get us your answers, and we will talk about that next week. Matt, I gotta say, I feel good about our idea. Now, if only we can get Walter Hamada to listen to us.
I know.
That's it. That's all we need. Maybe we should send him a copy of this episode.
I think we should.
I think we should, just to have the gumption to say that we did it. I don't know how good it's gonna do, but I like that idea.
Yeah.
All right, Matt. Well, I think we should wrap this up. We should also talk about Cobra Kai maybe for next week.
Yeah, I'm in.
Nice. I love it. All right, Super Friends, from all of us here at the Fortress of Nerditude, to all of you out there, wherever you may be, may the Force be with you always.